So first I have to say that have to give the standard disclaimer. I'm here representing myself and not my employer.
Yep.
So besides that, so a little bit about how I got where I am. I did my undergrad at Michigan State University and continued to do a master's degree there in human resources and labor relations. The whole time that I was doing both of those degrees, I was working at the library, but never once did it occur to me that I could work in a library for the rest of my life. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. So I graduated with my degree. I did an internship in human resources and I hated it. So then I was sort of back at square one. I knew I loved working in libraries though. So I found another job I moved to Chicago, got a job at DePaul University working with serials and a little bit of cataloging, and really enjoyed cataloging. So I applied to the distance online program, I guess, at UIUC. They call it the LEAP program, and they call it an online scheduling option. So you don't get a different degree than the people who are on campus, which I believe is what you guys have. In the middle of that, I got married. My husband got a job offer in DC. And since I was doing my program online, I was able to move with no problem, which was excellent. And then when I was here in DC, I got a job at Marymount University. While I was working full-time there, I was doing my program full-time. And also looking for jobs full-time, which I believe some of you will experience soon. My first professional library job was as a contractor. I worked for BAE Systems, and I was placed at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency where I cataloged maps. I did that for about 2 years while looking for really my dream job, which was working at the Library of Congress, and managed to get a job with the Congressional Research Service as a cataloger. And from there, I got bored of cataloging. And after a couple of years, I asked for more responsibilities, was given responsibility in digital archives. Our archivist left, and I was able to take over her role. So I did archives, records management, and then I moved into our content management team. And more recently, I got involved in our data analysis type work, and I just completed a certificate program at Georgetown in data science. So that's where I am. It's taken a while to get here, and with lots of fits and starts along the way. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think Lisa had some specific topics that she thought you guys might be interested in. So let me know.
Yeah, if you guys have, thanks Katie, if you guys have questions that you want to put in the chat, feel free to do that. And we'll just sort of look at what comes up. But I thought sort of to get us started, one of the things that Katie mentioned that she did was taking a contract position. And so maybe you can talk a little bit, Katie, about how that can be beneficial, or sort of like how does that work exactly?
Okay, so if you've started applying for jobs, you may have noticed that they frequently ask for 1 to 3 years of experience as an entry-level employee. And sometimes it's hard to get that first 1 year of experience under your belt. While I had lots of library experience, it wasn't at a professional level, so I was running into problems with that. I lucked into a contracting position because my husband happened to work at the contractor at that point in time, and he knew of a position that I could apply for. Contract positions are a good way to start your career because for a number of reasons. One, you can get a lot of experience in a bunch of different areas if that's the kind of contractor that you work for. Generally, contractors with library contracts have a lot of different things going on, so you can move around. Typically, it's it's easier to slide into a contracting role because they have so many positions available. So it is a good way to get some initial experience, get some professional years under your belt before you move on to a more permanent position where you don't have to worry as much about when your contract is ending. So if there are any specific questions about contracting, I can try to answer them.
Yeah, I know that when I was at CRS and I talked to some other people that were doing contracts, they sort of said it was a good way to get like varied skills, because you can kind of work on something and then you end up working on something else and you work on something else. And it was a good way to sort of quickly build up your resume, which I hadn't thought of.
Yes, absolutely. And if you are interested in government libraries, of course, that's where a ton of contracts are. I know there are ongoing contracts, of course, at the Library of Congress. There are some at like the Agriculture Department. DOD is notorious for having contracts. So there's a lot of different areas you can move around in and get a lot of different subject matter background. So that's an interesting approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was something I really never considered. So it was interesting to hear how useful that could actually be.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's how I got my start. So, I think it's a great idea. It worked out for me.
Yeah. And it sounds like it does for people, because someone else I had talked to said the same thing. She said that she didn't think she could have built up her resume the way that she did. And it was exactly what prepared her for her job at CRS, was just having that varied skill set. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think we hear about that so much. So it's good to know that that's an option and to do. Feel free, anyone, to put anything in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep asking questions. But but I'm watching. So if you put something in there, we'll stop. One of the other questions I had was, I know you said you recently moved sort of into the data science and working with data and analytics. How did you make that transition? So like, how did you develop those skills as you made your way towards doing the certificate?
Okay. Well, first of all, I asked for opportunities to move into different areas. That's important when you're in any job. Like I mentioned that I got tired of cataloging and I asked for more, and that just led to more and more and more, which is great for my career. In terms of the data stuff, our team was originally part of our IT team. So we called it Information Management and Technology. We just had a reorg and we've been moved to a different group, but because I started in the IT group, there was a lot of emphasis on IT skills. And because I had a new boss come in who had an actual technical background, he really encouraged us to take the time to learn our database and explore how to query the database. So he gave me a significant amount of time to just study SQL and Python. And after I taught myself enough to be dangerous, I just started asking for more opportunities to create reports for people as they asked for them. And then last year, I just found we finally had a training budget again, and I was like, well, I might as well go for it. I asked for the Georgetown certificate and I got it. And so I did that all summer and learned all about the data science pipeline and learned more than I will ever be able to do. But I at least know what's going on now. But really it was getting into the data stuff was taking advantage of the opportunities that came my way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good lesson for everybody to, make sure that you sort of ask for things and not just do what you're necessarily.
Yeah. I would also say for all of you, if you have the time in your schedules to take more IT classes, you should definitely do that. I think I told Lisa the same thing when she was with us this summer. I think that in general, everything, if you have those skills, then you've just got another thing that's going to make you potentially stand out. It's, eventually standing out because of your IT background isn't necessarily going to be a thing. But right now it is. So take advantage of it.
Yeah. When you were at U of I, did you guys have any tech sort of or IT requirements?
We did not have any, no. Unfortunately, we had classes that we could take if we were in the information management track. But as an LIS student, I didn't even think about it, which I'm of course mad about now, but well, that was 10 years ago or something. So it's too late now. But yeah, I definitely wish that I had. Instead, in library school, I tried to diversify in terms of my class load. I took classes that could apply to public libraries, that could apply to academic libraries, that, tried to give myself a little bit of background in any type of library. Really, I think that's a good idea. I also think taking the tech classes would have helped. So.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of schools that don't require tech either. We do have a tech requirement, and then a lot of tech opportunities in addition to the requirement. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we only had 2 required classes, and that was fundamentals of libraries, basically, and then a information management class, and everything else was up to us. So.
Yeah, I think that's still the case because Alicia was saying the same thing.
Okay.
So when I interned this summer, Alicia was the other intern with me, and she's actually from U of I. And yeah, Alicia had said the same, that she basically had those same requirements. So I think this summer made her think that she should probably take some tech classes. I see that we had a couple questions. I don't know, can you read those?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sharon was the first one, I think.
Okay. What kind of work did you do? Okay. So our digital archives, this is something that Lisa worked on quite a bit. Mm-hmm. We have an internal repository of products that are no longer distributable on our website. It's also where we keep products that were written for a single member of Congress and therefore are their property. We do not provide access to those at all, but we keep an internal repository for our internal use, research, authors can track what they've written, that kind of thing. So right now we're adding a bunch of born digital stuff. Of course, the current stuff is born digital and we can add that into our system, but we're also doing a massive digitization project. We have decades and decades worth of old products that we are trying to provide access to. So we have a process for checking to see if something's in the archive, scanning it, cleaning up the PDF as necessary, and then submitting that into the repository. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing now. There's other small projects. At some point, we're going to be digitizing our corporate archives and our records or things that have to be sent to the National Archives. So I hope that answers that question.
If you have a follow-up, Sharon, feel free to put it in there. I know Dan has another question, but maybe before you answer that, you might want to just because we didn't do this at the beginning, sort of explain what CRS is.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because a lot of people don't know what it is. First of all, a lot of people don't know it exists. And
Right.
second of all, don't know what it is.
So the Congressional Research Service is one of the branches of the Library of Congress. I think there are 7 total, but the library, or the Congressional Research Service is basically Congress's research arm. We do research and analysis specifically and only for Congress. So it's not a traditional library by any means. Most of our staff are policy experts. They have PhDs in, anything from chemistry to, American national government, that kind of thing. The team that I'm on, we play more of a support role. We're infrastructure, so we provide business analytics and content management, records management, all that kind of stuff. So within the library, we are, I believe, the only branch that has its own appropriations, which is sort of a big deal. So we always have a budget that Congress grants us separate from the library. So it gives us a little bit of independence.
Yeah, and it's pretty big. How many, I'm sure you don't know off the top of your head, but like a ballpark of how big CRS is?
So I think it's about 500 people. It might be a little lower than that, but we did get a bigger budget this year, so we're hiring a lot of people, so I'm not sure exactly where it stands.
Mm. Yeah, it was quite an eye-opening experience to see what that was. And it made me feel really good. And I said this to the head of CRS as I was leaving, that it made me feel really good to know just how much knowledge Congress has access to.
Yeah, it's very amazing. We have research divisions. There are 5 research divisions. There's American law, domestic and social policy, resources, science and industry, foreign affairs, defense and trade, and then government and finance. So we cover a large area. My team is called the Knowledge Services Group, and we are we're the most traditional library part of the library, but not completely. So, okay.
Yeah.
So should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, so Dan's question was next, I think.
Okay. What other classes did I take at UIUC? So I did focus on information management when I was at UIUC. And that is basically the foundation of everything that I do. I took cataloging 1, cataloging 2, metadata classes, of course the basic information management class. I do find that I took it, I cannot think of what it's called, but it was basically like information resources, something. It was about how to find information and how to answer reference questions. I don't get reference questions often, but I do have to go out and seek information often. So I find that useful. What was fun but completely not useful was my adult genre literature class. But that was a good summer class to take.
Yeah, you have to have something to balance all the hard stuff.
I'm trying to remember what else I took, but I think that was really the foundation of everything I do. So, other question, having done data science. So what's essential within that in the data science and business analytics field? So what I do at CRS is pretty low key compared to what I learned at Georgetown. For what I do on a daily basis, what's useful is understanding how databases work first. We have an Oracle database, relational. SQL I use nearly every day. And we also use Power Query, which was an add-on to Excel, but is now, I guess, built into the more recent version. If you don't know Power Query, that's a pretty powerful tool that allows you to combine data and manipulate it. In the data science, oh, well, I also learned a little bit of Python, enough to think I know what I'm doing. Not enough to actually do anything substantial. But really, in terms of not technical skills, but not program specific type thing or language specific type things, just understanding how to wrangle data and bring it together and make sense of what you're looking at has been the most essential part. I think right now we have a staff member who is trying to learn SQL, and it's one thing to look at an online class and learn it with a sample database where the data's all clean and it's a small database, but really the hardest part of it for me was learning what our database was, what it looked like, what it contained, where the information was contained, and that took a while, so.
Yeah, can you give like an example of something that you do with the data, like to present it for whatever purpose?
Sure. So today, actually, yesterday, I'll go with the request I got yesterday. Yesterday, I got an urgent request. This has never happened before. So I was like, oh, the Librarian of Congress was doing an interview with the Washington Post, and she needed some information on the public CRS site. In case you guys didn't know, back in September, well, let's go back to March. In March, Congress passed a bill that said all CRS reports will be public. This is like something that I know a lot of people in the information industry have wanted for a very long time, and it finally happened. And on September 18th, our public website went live. So it was a huge deal. And the librarian wanted information so she could talk about the site. So I gathered information from, we just started using Adobe Analytics with that site, and Elasticsearch, so I can pull out some data from there. So I pulled out data from that and combined some different data sources within Power Query, and was able to give her some, fun stats that maybe she talked about. I don't know yet. We'll see. If you guys see an interview in the Washington Post and there are any statistics, then those came from me.
That's pretty cool.
I thought so.
Oh, that'll be neat. We're going to have to all be like looking for what she says. I do follow her on Twitter. So. Oh,
there you go. She'll probably post it.
Or someone will post it for her.
Oh, that's true.
Well, that's neat though. That would be,
But beyond that, that's the public site is one thing, but for business analytics, we're always, people will email us and say, we want this sort of data about this sort of thing, and we have to figure out how to pull that out of our database. And a lot of that is done with SQL queries. So. I will ask another one of my questions. If anybody else has a question, feel free to ask. What I was going to ask about was just applying for government jobs. That's sort of a different process than most of us are used to. It's been a while since I've done it. But if you guys do not have a profile on USA Jobs, you should definitely create one. In the profile, you can fill out all of your basic resume information. Let's just say that the process is pretty involved, but USA Jobs is the place that you start. What happens with, specifically, I can speak to Library of Congress jobs. in addition to your resume and your application, you're also answering basically KSAs, so knowledge, skills, and abilities. There will be something that states one of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that this position needs is ability to organize information. So you basically have to write a mini essay stating how and where you have done that in your past. And it can be anything from what you've done in school to what you've done on the job. So, you know, you're not limited to just professional experience or anything like that. But the key is reuse the words that are in the within the question. That's sort of a good way to guide your essay. So frequently the essays will say the KSA will say something like, do you have experience doing this with A and B, with A, B, and C? And so you just sort of have to touch on each of those to prove that you have that experience, and that moves you forward in the process.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, and there's multiple of those that you fill out, usually.
Usually there's 4 or 5, I think, that you have to respond to. So don't go into a government job opening and think you're gonna just submit your application and be done. No, you wanna make sure that you write some essays.
Yeah, the nice thing is there's no cover letter. Are you doing that instead?
Right.
So that part's good. You're answering very specific questions versus sort of just like pontificating about yourself in a cover letter.
Exactly. They're interested in your experience and your education. They're not interested in how fancy you can write your cover letter.
And it's a good idea, remember, to save them because you may be able to reuse parts of them.
Absolutely. So especially for your library jobs, those KSAs are going to be the same between jobs. So do everything you can to save them. It'll save you time.
Yeah. And also can you talk just a little bit about the differences in the resume? Because the resume is a little bit different for a federal resume.
You know, I don't know. You probably know more than me. I do know there's a lot more information in, they'll ask you salary and supervisor and contact information for your supervisor. I don't remember what else is in there.
I know you have to sort of say, they give you an example on USA Jobs. So for anyone that's gonna do that, they do have an example resume, and I basically just sort of follow that. Like they actually give you an example federal resume and an example corporate resume, more just to show you how they're different. But you can just sort of copy that example federal resume. But yeah, you do have to say like exact dates of when you started and when you finished the position, what your pay was, how many hours you worked there. My federal resume looks very different. The nice thing is you don't have to feel like you have to be concise. They don't seem to care that you fit it on 2 pages.
Nope, they don't care.
So you can sort of like feel that part is a little bit freeing, I found. But that, you know, you do want to sort of follow that format.
The good thing is once you've done all that once and you've saved it, you don't have to do it again. You can of course edit it, but you don't have to worry about like recreating it for every job that you apply to.
Right, yeah, and you can save it in USA Jobs, so like it's already on there. You just sort of click on it and send it with that KSA to that particular job, which is nice. Yeah, it was sort of a shocker for me when I first started applying.
Yeah, it is a big process.
Different, but I did come to actually prefer. You get used to it, I think, and I did, like I said, end up preferring the KSAs. It's just a little bit more like, okay, I know what you're asking me a question and I can answer it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then as far as like the interview process for that, maybe you can just give a basic of like how.
Sure. So the process, once you've submitted your resume, all of the resumes go through a screening process. You have to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 on the KSAs. And then the hiring manager or selecting official, I think is what they are called, will select what the cutoff is for the like average number of points, basically. So a hiring manager might say, I want to receive the resumes of everybody who had 4 and above. That's the batch that goes on to the hiring committee. It's always a committee, usually of 3 people. Just be prepared if you go in for an interview. It's going to be a panel interview. The panel then reviews the resumes independently. They meet. They discuss with HR who they think makes it through to the next round. Everybody has to agree on who goes into the next round. Once that's done, the interviews are set up. Everybody comes in, has exactly the same interview experience. You get the same, usually 5 or 6 questions in the same order, asked by the same person. The only thing that might vary is the follow-up questions. If you don't answer exactly what they're looking for, they'll follow up. The interview questions are basically the exact same as the KSAs. So you know what the questions are going to be when you go into the interview, which I think is like sort of amazing for an interview process. But as long as you know that those KSAs are what they are and what you answered, and you can repeat that in the interview, then of course you should elaborate, but then you're good to go. After that, the committee or the panel will meet, discuss who passes the interview phase. And once they have the final list of people who pass the interview phase, that's when they discuss who's actually going to get the job. But there's several benchmarks that people have to pass in order to get through, and it's very structured like that to make sure everybody gets a fair chance.
And on your USA Jobs profile, you can, when you submit one, it'll say received. And then it'll say referred if you got on to the next step. That's right, Katie? If they don't always tell you, right?
They'll tell you if you pass. I think it's referred, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think they tell you if you're referred, but after that, I don't know that you're notified until you get an interview.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. I know on USA Jobs, they have sort of like what the different things.
They do try to keep you posted, but it's only through USA Jobs. So you have to take the initiative to go and look at the site.
Yeah. And I think I was able to set up alerts so that it would tell me if things changed.
That's good.
Yeah, I think I did that. I don't know if that, I'm sure that's not automatic, obviously, but I know that I would get emails like with certain things. Like it wouldn't say what it was in the email. It would say, there was a status change.
Oh, okay.
Or something like that. Trying to remember. Yeah, it's such a different process than like corporate or public library or academic library, which is like another totally different.
It's a very formal process, but it's pretty easy to navigate, especially if you know that you meet the requirements in the KSAs. You know what the interview questions are going to be. So I think that's really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like Sharon had another question.
Do I use any of my original knowledge or skills from the human resources degree? I guess, well, one of the courses I took was training. That was beneficial. It helped me learn how to set up training programs, which I do. Not a lot of formal training, but a lot of one-on-one training I do with our staff, teaching them on our digitization process. I took a hiring class, and it basically echoed everything that USA Jobs and the whole interview process is. So that was useful. I've been on a handful of interview panels, so it's arduous for the panel. It's worse, I know, for job seekers, but you know, like at least you know everybody's dealing with exactly the same thing. What else? There were basic stats classes with my HR degree that I still find useful. In general, there's just you know, you get to a point where you're supervising, whether it's workflows or people, the HR skills do come in handy there. It's not like pure management, but there was, you know, some overlap there.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before, but yeah, you were a very good supervisor, and maybe that was partially your personality, but partially your human resources background. Katie made really good training materials and did good training, so yeah, that makes total sense.
My original like ideal job was actually working for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, because my favorite class in my HR program was employment law, and I thought if I could work at the library at the EEOC, that would be awesome. But then while I was in my like first semester, they hired someone. I was like, oh, that was probably the only position there. So it worked out. I'm okay where I am now.
I did apply for a reference position at the EEOC, but I did not get it. So I thought it sounded interesting too. But I didn't have quite the experience that they were looking for.
Sure.
Did you want to talk a little bit about the STIP internship program?
Oh, sure, yeah. So every summer, CRS offers the STIP, which is this Student Diversity Internship Program. I think those are the right words for that. And I think, do you remember how many interns there were, Lisa?
It was a lot. I was thinking about it last night, trying to remember, and there were 2 waves of us, and
I think maybe 60 interns.
Yeah, I was gonna say between 60 and 80. There was definitely about 40 in my wave,
okay.
And then they had a second wave 2 weeks later. So.
And some of those are for public policy areas, but there are quite a few of them that are library related. Some of them for people who are interested in data science are related to like what do we call them? I think it's research analysts. But within each division, there are a handful of people who help with the data analysis, data processing, gathering data, all that kind of stuff to help the analysts as they do their reports for Congress. So that is something that it's not limited to librarianship, but it's also available. I think our team had 2 interns this summer. Almost every year we've had 2. The one year we had 1, I felt bad for that person because like everybody else has had like somebody to hang out with and, you know, like bounce ideas off of, and she did not, unfortunately. But yeah, so I believe that we send out a notice to several library schools. Rutgers, obviously you found out about it, Lisa.
Yeah.
UIUC, a bunch of others. And you send in your resume to our HR department and they separate them out based on your areas of interest. Generally, we post I think it's like subject areas and things that we're interested in. So I'm not sure if you replied to the archives one or just, I don't remember what, we had one that was sort of leaning towards archives and one that was sort of leaning towards data. And so we get a pool and it's the interview process for the internships is much less formal
Yeah.
than the USA jobs. But our team in particular, we try really hard to get you the experience that you want to get. So if you want experience with writing queries, we'll make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. If you want experience with cataloging, we'll make sure you have the opportunity to do that. And if you want experience doing reference, which is not something my team does, then we'll find somebody to let you do reference work. So we've been really flexible, and we've been really lucky with the people that we've had. And we always have, I think Lisa can confirm that we provide a lot of opportunity to learn and add to your resume.
Definitely. And really, I did ask for, I mean, that's made very clear that whatever you want to learn, they're happy to let you learn. So, I mean, we sat in on a scrum one day. I asked to talk to somebody in one of the other divisions, because I had actually applied for 2 divisions and surprisingly got both internships. And so had to decide between them. And so I had picked the information architecture data analytics group, but then I sort of wanted to talk to someone from RSI, which was the Resources, Science and Industry division, to sort of see what that was like. They were totally open to letting me do that. So, I mean, I feel like I did a whole bunch of different projects. I did a little bit of the, physical archive stuff. I did a lot of the repository stuff, which is what I really wanted to work on. I just felt like there were so many opportunities. The other thing that is available for everyone that does the STIP, all the CRS interns, and probably all the interns, is all the classes that they offer at the library you can take. So, and Congress too, because I did some stuff at like some congressional stuff. I did like a bib frame workshop.
Did you go to the data transparency?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I went to data transparency, which was so cool. And then I went to a bunch of things with LC Labs, because LC Labs does really cool stuff. And so I went to a bunch of their talks. I went to a talk just with the Librarian of Congress when she interviewed Nelson Mandela's grandson, who wrote a book. So like definitely anytime I asked if I could have time in my day to go to some kind of talk, Doug, who is Katie's supervisor, would say, yes, absolutely, go do that. I'm sure, I mean, I can only speak to, the group that I was in as to how flexible they were, but I think that most of the groups are like that. They know you're there to learn. They want to give you lots of opportunities to explore things. And I mean, it's such a cool place to be that of course you want to try different things out.
Right, and they do try to do things like tours of the library, of course, the Capitol. I think one year people got to go to C-SPAN.
Yes, we did C-SPAN.
Oh, you did C-SPAN?
Yeah, it was very cool.
I'm trying to, there have been other things where I've been like, man, I wish I could go on that.
Yeah.
I wish I were an intern.
Yeah, we got a tour of the Congressional Reading Room, like that one that like not even the congressional staff people can go into, like it's just Congress.
The Jefferson Reading Room?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
That was awesome. They had like a cooler or something that there was like a cooler that had like a thing on it that they used like a gazillion years ago that they used to put alcohol in or something.
Yeah, they used to hide their alcohol in there. And you get to go in the main reading room without, having to do research, as long as you're quiet, of course, but that's one of my favorite things, is going in there.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. And, so CRS is mostly, well, all completely housed in the Madison building, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were over in the Madison building, which is not the pretty building. The pretty building is the Jefferson building.
Yes.
There's 3 buildings, Jefferson, Adams, and Madison, but all of CRS is in the Madison building. But there's tunnels connecting like everything in DC. But and so you get good at like navigating the tunnels and going over and doing all that stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Going into Congress, I got to go to something, the GIS team took us over to something that was, GIS related.
Oh, okay.
With the congressional staff in one of the buildings, I think it was one of the representative buildings. I can't remember if it was Russell or which one it was. But yeah, we got to sort of sit in on that and see all the congressional staff members asking questions, which was really interesting to see what types of questions different staff members were asking.
And you get to go see all of the protests.
Yes.
There's a lot of those lately.
And they were filming Wonder Woman when I was there this summer.
Right, they were.
I saw lots of that. Which was cool. Yeah, I have the link to, yeah, I'm sharing my screen, so I don't know if I open up, I think if I open up my email, you're all gonna see my entire email, which you probably are not interested in. Let me see if I can stop sharing, and I have a link to the internships from last year. So it's like a old link. It says that everything's expired, but it's from Rutgers, but it's all the positions that were offered through this STIP program, all the different internships. And then you can kind of, so I'll post that in the chat, and then you can get an idea of what's available, because it was definitely I mean, I sort of threw it out there thinking there's no way that I'm going to get this position. And I did. So it was like so shocking. So, but it's a pretty, it's not a complicated process. You sort of just send your resume and cover letter, that just sort of states what positions you're interested in. And then to Ilya Melissa, who's like HR type, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's really, really nice. And then, if you get contacted for an interview, that's a phone interview. And then you really deal with Ilya Melissa with kind of setting everything up. You have to send them a bunch of information and sign away like 8,000 of paper.
Yeah, you have to do a background check and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
One important thing, you are hired as an actual employee, and so you are paid.
Yes. And you're paid well.
Yes, you're paid well as an intern. So that's another, good thing about it.
Yeah. Because obviously I live in New Jersey, and so I relocated for the summer, and it's a 10-week internship. It's full-time, 40 hours a week. So I got an apartment down there, and left my children and my husband home and just got to have fun. But if anybody is interested and wants to sort of hear about how I found an apartment that was affordable and all that stuff, I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. But the pay really did compensate for the fact that I was living in DC. There is a subsidy for the metro, so that is, they sort of give you, that's all subsidized. You get a metro card, and it's, we'll get you through going 5 days a week to work, to and from work, which is really nice.
And I don't know, there's also a program called Haku. It's the Hispanic College and University something.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what it stands for, but they also partner with the library. And so there are several paid internships through that program also.
Yeah. In
that program, you're working at the Library of Congress, but you're technically employed by the Haku program, but doesn't really matter. You get the same experience. I think you might have a little more responsibilities with Haku. I think there are like progress reports and things like that you have to do, but you get the same internship that you would get if you applied through STIP.
Yeah, and we had one in KSG, and they also get housing.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, which is a nice little bonus, because that's sort of like getting paid more. So, and also we should say if you're graduating, like if you're a student now, you can still apply even if you're going to graduate. Mm-hmm. So there were people in the program that had finished their MLS already, just the semester prior, and were still doing the internship as they were in like that transition state before they had a regular job. So that's also kind of a nice way to spend your summer before you start a regular job too, if you have that flexibility and opportunity to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me see if I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm not sure what's going to happen. So let's try it. I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Hopefully you just see like my LISSA black screen. Is that right? That's what I'm hoping. And I'm going to pull up my email so I can put that in the chat. And then I do have, sorry, I meant to get it ready ahead of time. So this was the link that I applied through last year, and I just happened to have saved the link, which I never do. So that was sort of a nice save here. And I'm going to paste it right in here. Okay, did that go to everybody? Let's see that link. And then you guys can, and I'll go back to the picture and share it again so we're not. Okay, are we back to the way we were before?
Looks like it.
All right, sorry for that little detour. I just wanted to, because the nice thing about that is that you can see, okay, thank you for telling me it's there, yeah. I'm hoping it works. If it doesn't work, someone let me know. But it will show you all the different positions that were available last year. And so they are last year's, but my guess is they're going to be pretty similar this year.
Very likely they will be.
Yeah, so you will see, I think there were 3 KSG ones, 3 knowledge services group ones, 2 were for Katie's group. I forget what the other one was, probably through the reference type 1 or something.
Yeah.
And then there's all the other divisions have opportunities too. So there's a lot. Yeah,
and frequently those posts are for multiple positions, so it's not necessarily just a single person. So we in the past have gotten, we selected one person one year and then we were like, hey, can we have 2? We're like, sure, why not? All right. So
yeah, which is nice, and it was a really great group of people. So it was a mix. It was mostly grad students that were in the STIP program. There were a few undergrads. There were a couple of PhD candidates. There was a medical doctor or like an MD student. Because like you said, they're not all library and information science people. But it was a nice group, and they do, we had like an ice cream social, couple ice cream socials actually.
We like our ice cream.
Yeah. We got to meet with the Librarian of Congress and ask her whatever questions we had, which was like, that was really cool to just sort of get to chat with her a little bit. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and obviously that's not the only program that's available through the Library of Congress. There's the Junior Fellows program, which is another one. Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot about them, but there are a bunch of other programs. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested in government libraries or just sort of moving to DC for the summer, take a look at all the different opportunities that there are available for internships, because there's so many interns in the summer. Like the metro is full of interns all summer long.
Very true.
Crazy. Did anybody else have any other questions for Katie? I know we're coming up on an hour, so I don't want to keep anybody too much longer. If you got something that you wanted to ask about in any way, shape, or form.
And if you guys do have questions afterwards, go ahead and email Lisa, and she knows how to get in touch with me. So I'm happy to respond later also.
Yeah, I'll put my email in here. Most of you guys see me emailing constantly, so you can just reply to anything that I send out. I think that looks right. And you can always contact me through the Facebook group or whatever. I'm always out there. I feel like you guys hear from me more than anyone would actually want to. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Katie for giving us an hour of her time out of her very busy life.
It's okay. I have a day off tomorrow. It's all good.
Yay. That's good. Very good. Well, and Katie, definitely tell everyone I said hello.
Oh, I definitely will. I already told Doug. He was very excited about this.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pop by because the ALA conference is in DC this summer.
Yes, I just found that out.
Yeah.
I haven't been paying attention, and Lillian told me yesterday. So yeah.
Yeah. So
definitely stop by.
yeah, we'll all have a meetup or something, but it's gonna be fun. All right, well, I hope everybody has a good night, and let me know, just send me an email if anybody has any questions. Thank you, Katie.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye-bye.